Your boy Mook Nail. So we're back doing another video. Uh, you know, this one is not a little different. This one, actually, let me just get to the intro. I'm stupid. You're watching a video called "Disturbing Things from Our World," Volume 6-7. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I can never say 67 normally for that one. It's just kind of wrong for you to not. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, this is by Fright Factory. And we gonna see what they talking about in this joint. You know what I'm saying? No further ado, let's get into the video. I ain't gonna waste your time. You know, intro kind of messed up today, but it's alright. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't in the best of moods, but yeah, let's get it.
The footage you're looking at was taken at Illinois Middle School in the 90s, and not even 3 weeks after this, a young girl playing the guitar would experience something extremely dark, and it wasn't until a while after when people started going through her diary entries
Bro.
that a highly disturbing
Okay, this is so
connection
actually loud
was
as hell.
made. In this video, I'm going to be discussing a series of disturbing things with a focus on lesser-known cases, because if you're anything like me, you've probably heard most of them already. So, I'll tell you everything, but as usual, let's get into the backstories first. The 13-year-old girl that you're looking at is named Rachel Skent. She was a 7th grade honors student at Ward Middle School in Illinois, and those who knew her described a very bright kid with warm energy. She loved science, writing, playing guitar, and listening to Alanis Morissette. She wanted to grow up and be a teacher, and she was very passionate about school. She had her whole life ahead of her, and by every account, was a very good person to be around. Unfortunately, Rachel's family was far from simple. Her biological parents, Jeff and Amy, had married in the early 80s, but divorced when Rachel was around 3 years old, and Jeff eventually relocated to Dallas, Texas. Amy went on to marry a man named Vincent Mellon. In the household at 612...
Bro, I heard that the divorce rate was really high in the 80s and 90s, bro. I'm not even gonna lie. Even the 70s, bro. That shit crazy. I was just reading a comment like there earlier on TikTok where people were saying it was like, it definitely do make sense. And it was because they said because the drug rate was high, everything, bro. That crack had people fucking up,
Rachel,
seriously.
her mother, her stepfather Vincent, and her 2 younger
People really going through it
half-siblings,
on that
Jason
time.
and Ashley. On paper, it looked like a normal blended family in a quiet Illinois suburb, but like with many things, it's not that simple, and behind closed doors, things were deeply troubled. Vincent was unemployed and had quite a temper. In 1993, Amy filed a domestic incident report alleging that Vincent had struck her, shoving her down a flight of stairs in front of the children in the process, and that he was very verbally rough to Rachel specifically. Despite these red flags, the family stayed together. But it horribly just gets a lot worse than this. What nobody on the outside knew at the time, and what wouldn't surface for years, is that Rachel had been keeping a diary, and the contents of this diary would eventually paint an even worse picture of what was going on in the home, because it wasn't just verbal. But we'll get to that shortly. First, I want to get to the morning of January 31st, 1996, when Rachel reportedly stayed home from school with a sore throat. Her mother left for work, her younger siblings went to school, and 13-year-old Rachel was left alone in the house with the one person she had every reason to fear. January 31st, 1996 was brutally cold, even by Illinois standards. Temperatures sat around 0 degrees Fahrenheit, or negative 17 Celsius, with the wind chill pushing that to as low as negative 20. According to Vincent Mellon's account, he and Rachel spent part of the day playing video games together, and then at around 11 in the morning, Rachel made a phone call to her paternal grandmother, Lucy, down in Dallas, thanking her for some Christmas presents. This call lasted about 4 or 5 minutes and seemed normal at first, but Lucy would later tell investigators that Rachel suddenly went very quiet partway through the conversation. When Lucy asked if Vincent was there, Rachel said yes and quickly ended the call. And her biological father, Jeff, would later point out that this call was unusual even in itself, because Rachel was not normally allowed to contact his side of the family. As the early afternoon went on, Vincent claimed Rachel went to her bedroom to take a nap and wrapped herself up in a blue blanket. He then said he left the house to walk the family's German Shepherd, leaving the front door unlocked. He was gone for roughly 30 minutes, and when he returned, he said Rachel was no longer in her room. When half-siblings Jason and Ashley got home from school at around 3:15, 6-year-old Ashley noticed her older sister wasn't in the bedroom, but she didn't mention it. Both of these kids would later tell investigators that Vincent was in the garage when they arrived. When Amy Mellon got home from work around 4 or 5:30 that evening and realized that Rachel was missing, she called the police, but this was around 6 p.m.
Damn, just out the house? That's crazy.
When you can't agree on what to eat or you're settling for whatever, mealtime could be more trouble than it's worth. That's where wonder comes in.
Police arrived and realized quickly that when they were looking through Rachel's belongings, her winter coat was still there. So were her shoes, her purse, her money, and her wallet. The only things actually missing were Rachel herself, that blue blanket, and 2 pillows from her bed. She was last seen wearing a pink sweatshirt, yellow sweatpants, and a pair of red house slippers in -20 wind chill. I think it's safe to say that no child walks out of a house voluntarily dressed like that unless they had to or they were forced to. Because Rachel had briefly run away once before, in the warmer months of 1995, so like a year earlier, where she spent about 12 hours sleeping outside a friend's house before being picked up, the police made a decision that would haunt this case for decades. They classified her disappearance as a runaway and didn't begin actively investigating until the following morning. That delay in this type of weather gave hours of time that can never be recovered. And when officers finally did examine the scene more closely, they noticed scratches on Vincent Mellon's body, which he attributed to word Mellon's car. But according to Jeff Skem, police never searched the attached garage, and they never looked inside the trunk of a vehicle Vincent had supposedly been working on. Jeff has said publicly for years that he believes his daughter would have been found right then and there if they had, because absolutely nobody could find Rachel Skem. The investigation expanded over time. Jeff's home in Dallas was even searched, and relatives in Mississippi were checked. Investigators even explored whether Amy's family had taken Rachel back to the Philippines, because she was half Filipino. But nothing came of any of this. Then, in what has been reported as March of 2000, so years later, investigators recovered Rachel's diary. And in this, they realized some things. An entry dated August 7, 1995, described Vincent kissing Rachel and touching her inappropriately. He had apparently warned her about predators while doing this and simultaneously telling her that it shouldn't happen until she was older. This discovery prompted police to reopen the case as a first-degree murder investigation. And in January of 2000, Vincent was brought in and interrogated for 9 hours. Authorities obtained a search warrant for blood, saliva, and hair samples, and on February 2nd, both Vincent and Amy were subpoenaed before a Will County grand jury. Vincent invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination repeatedly. Amy maintained that someone had kidnapped her daughter and that unnamed people knew where Rachel was. Vincent had already failed polygraph examinations related to the disappearance, and the grand jury ultimately concluded without returning any indictments, and no charges have ever been filed. It's also worth noting that a police officer who helped coordinate those grand jury proceedings was a sergeant named Drew Peterson. He would later become nationally infamous when his own fourth wife vanished in 2007, and he was convicted of murdering his third wife. Of course, this connection says more about him and the department's culture than it does about Rachel's specific case, but this is a detail that shouldn't go unmentioned. As of January 2026, it has been 30 years since Rachel disappeared, and there is still no resolution. No remains have ever been covered, no charges have ever been brought, and Vincent Mellon, who has accumulated a criminal record over the years that includes multiple domestic battery charges, DUI arrests, and theft, has not been further pursued in connection to what happened to his stepdaughter, despite all of this. He and Amy eventually left the area and relocated to Tennessee, before Vincent eventually returned to the Chicagoland area at some point. The case is formally classified as a homicide and remains open, and has a $10,000 reward offered through Crime Stoppers for information leading to charges. In January of 2026, for the 30th anniversary, Rachel's childhood best friend, Carrie, spoke out once again and challenged this narrative that had been accepted for 3 decades, telling NBC Chicago that the claim Rachel stayed home sick never made sense to her because Rachel loved being at school. And if that's true and Rachel didn't voluntarily stay home that day, then the question of why she was kept there becomes, well, very disturbing. Jeff Skem, Rachel's biological father, has kept his phone number listed for 30 years in the hope that his daughter might one day try to reach him. He's publicly accepted the likelihood that she's no longer alive, but he has never stopped looking. This is a case where the evidence points in one direction so obviously that it almost feels insulting to the people who loved Rachel. In my opinion, the system absolutely failed this young girl. She kept a diary that documented her own abuse, and she vanished from a place where the only other person present was the man that she wrote about. I think this girl deserves so much better, and the very least I can do is just make sure that her name isn't forgotten. Rest in peace.
How we know that she did, though? I feel like just because somebody goes missing doesn't mean that, they did. Sometimes it's just something that's very unexplainable. You know what I'm saying? So, because that. She probably still loves someone. She's just older.
So I'm immediately going to give you guys a heads up here. I believe this to probably be the worst case I've ever covered on this channel, at least recently. I mention how cases are up there sometimes, but this is different and you'll see why. I came across this a couple months ago, but I really wanted to wait a bit and see if anything came of it, as I try to stay away from breaking stories. And it seems we have some updates, so I'm going to touch on it. I know the mother wants justice. She told reporters that she wants her daughter's story to be told, and I feel like getting this to a larger audience is a key part in that.
We have everything you need to unlock your best workout for 1 cent down, so you can give everything you've got.
The 5-year-old girl you're looking at is named Amari Jones. She's from Cleveland, Ohio, and by all accounts from her mother, she's one of the most energetic and joyful kids you'll ever meet. She's very, very affectionate, and she's so funny and proper for her age that her mother said she'd literally just crack you up. So on Saturday, September 13th, 2025, Amari's mother, Antavia, needed to undergo a medical procedure. She dropped her daughter off at a family member's home near East 145th and St. Clair Avenue in Cleveland's Collinwood neighborhood. She was going into a procedure, but other than that, it should have just been a simple, uneventful afternoon. Again, Amari would stay with family until her mom was finished, and then mom would go pick her up. But at some point while she was in the relative's care, Amari walked out the front door of the home without anyone noticing. I don't know how this happened, but it happened, and according to Antavia, at some point while she was outside, a small group of people from the neighborhood came across her daughter, and they came off as friendly. But this very, very quickly got very, very bad. This group took the 5-year-old by the hand and walked her to a wooded field in the 1000 block of East 148th Street. Pretty quickly, the babysitter realized that Amari was gone, so she called 911 immediately, and a desperate search began, but this was already too late. In the process, 2 of the 3 people who had taken her were found, but they denied knowing anything about where she was initially. It wasn't until one of their own mothers intervened and forced them to reveal what had happened that anyone was led back to that field. And when first responders arrived, they found Amari in the fetal position. She was unclothed, unconscious, and covered in dirt. She had been beaten, strangled with her own clothing, and sexually assaulted. She had been scalped, and there's more details, it's really bad. She was rushed to the hospital by EMS, clinging to life. Amari would spend roughly a week in that hospital, and when Antavia first laid eyes on her daughter, she said that what she saw was unbelievable, like the child laying in front of her was not the daughter she recognized. When Amari finally regained consciousness, the first words out of her mouth were devastating. She screamed that they had killed her, meaning this 5-year-old girl genuinely believed that she had passed away. In the weeks and months that followed, Amari's personality began to shift in ways that broke her mother's heart even more. This once bubbly and happy child had started making violent and deeply troubling statements she had never heard before. She was placed into therapy through a local crisis service program, but her mother has been open to the fact that it's going to be a long and painful road. Antavia also told one Cleveland news station that what was done to her daughter was inhumane, and that watching how much her little girl has changed since that day has been one of the hardest things she's ever endured. Now here's where this story takes what I think is the most chilling turn, and it's the detail that made this case national news.
A 10-year-old and 9-year-old did it? How? How the fuck does a 10 and 9-year-old actually think like that? What the hell?
Even though it really wasn't spoken about all that much.
No, them is not no damn kids. Them some damn devils, bro.
On October 15th, 2025, roughly 1 month after the attack, prosecutor's office announced charges against 2 suspects. And they were not
Bro,
teenagers.
do y'all not know how young 10 and 9 years old is? It's like you wouldn't even process no thought like that at their age. That's fucking crazy. So they was dead ass having thoughts like serial killers as children. That's wild, bro.
They weren't adults. The individuals charged with doing this to Amari Jones were a 9-year-old boy and a 10-year-old girl.
That's what I said.
There was
How
another
the
8-year-old
fuck
boy
are you 10 and 9 years old doing that?
Charged. Each of them was hit with 9 felony counts: 1 count of attempted murder, 4 counts of rape, 2 counts of felonious assault, 1 count of kidnapping, and 1 count of strangulation. These are some of the most serious charges that can be filed in the state of
How many
Ohio,
years did they
and
get?
they were being leveled against children who were not even 10 years old. The prosecutor's office released a brief statement confirming that they were receiving information and evidence, but declined to comment any further given the sensitive nature of the case. And Tavia's social media posts about what had happened to her daughter were shared over 130,000 times, and a GoFundMe campaign she launched to cover Amari's medical and legal expenses raised over $160,000. The court proceedings that followed only deepened the weight of the case when the 10-year-old girl appeared before Judge Kristen Sweeney, which I believe was on November 5th. She's wearing a face mask and a pink coat, and she didn't speak. Her parents did not show up, and her public defender entered a denial on her behalf, which is the juvenile equivalent of a not guilty plea. They immediately requested a competency evaluation, arguing that there were serious questions about whether a child this young could even understand the charges against her. The judge granted this and ordered home detention with an electric ankle monitor. The 9-year-old boy, meanwhile, failed to appear entirely that day, with his family citing car trouble. He showed up over a week later on November 13th, accompanied by 2 adults whose relationship to him the court couldn't even verify.
My thing is this though, why is he not in like a juvenile detention center or some shit? Like, I don't know how old you had to be in there, but I think it's usually the age of a minor, basically. That's still crazy though.
It came out during a subsequent hearing that the boy's mother was hospitalized and his father was deceased, and due to an inability to confirm a legal guardian combined with ongoing threats against his family, the judge placed him in emergency custody. Throughout every single
Bro, he should have been in the juvenile detention center or something, bro. Like, bro, y'all know these people filming gonna try to escape.
He told the court directly that this kind of behavior does not deserve grace.
They're gonna flee to a whole other country,
exactly
man.
What they were doing, and that the environment that produced this kind of violence clearly started in the home. As of early 2026, both defendants are awaiting competency evaluations and no trial date has been set. Under Ohio's juvenile law, neither child can be tried as an adult since that requires a minimum age of 14. For Intavia, a mother who just wanted her daughter to have a safe afternoon while she went to a medical appointment, this fight for accountability and justice is far from over, and my heart is with Amari, Intavia, and the whole family.
Nah, bro, you listen, I don't give a fuck how old he is. They could be 4 years old. You gotta blame some kids for that, man. That's entirely their fault. Because who else fault could it be, bro? You don't think like that when you're 10, 9 years old. I'm sorry. It's just impossible.
Did you know Honeygrow is on Uber Eats?
Unless you real evil.
Now you can get a buy one, get one free. Create your own stir fry.
The story begins with a woman named Erlene Rivera. She lives in a home in the state of Georgia, just northeast of Atlanta, alongside her sister and her 92-year-old mother. On the morning of November 28th, 2025, something happened inside their home that none of them saw coming, and if it hadn't been for a decision that this family made years earlier, this wouldn't have happened the way it happened. When the Rivera family first purchased the Woodacres Road property and started doing renovations on the house, they discovered a baby rabbit living underneath it. Instead of shooing this animal away or calling someone to deal with it, the Riveras decided to do something different. They instead took the little guy and raised him as their own. They named him Coco, set up a cage for him in the kitchen, and over time he just became part of daily life. Now, Coco didn't really do that much. I'm not trying to hate on rabbits. I think they're very cute. But like compared to other animals, they're not particularly remarkable in their behavior, and Coco was no different. He's just a calm, snow-white rabbit who lived a pretty uneventful existence in that kitchen cage. And the Riveras loved him for exactly what he was. On Thursday, November 27th, 2025, the Riveras spent Thanksgiving together. They spent time with each other at the home, enjoyed the holiday, and eventually made their way out to the wooden back deck as the evening calmed down. At some point during the night, they lit a warming fire inside a metal barrel to keep comfortable while they sat outside, which was a pretty standard thing to do and nothing out of the ordinary. When the night was over and everyone was ready to turn in, the family extinguished the fire and headed inside. They got settled, said their goodnights, and fell asleep. But sometime in the early hours of Friday morning, those embers came back to life. The fire inside the barrel reignited on its own, and because this barrel was sitting directly on that wooden deck, the flames somehow started to spread. They caught the deck first, then climbed up to the back exterior of the house, and eventually started pushing their way inside, right into the kitchen where Coco was. By this point, the home was filling with smoke, and every single person in that house was still sound asleep. Remember, this home also has a 92-year-old woman upstairs, and it's actively on fire. Nobody knows about this. So Coco's cage was right there in the kitchen, directly in the path of the advancing flames. And as the heat and smoke reached that part of the house, Coco started doing something his family had never really seen from him before. He began slamming his hind legs against the floor of the cage over and over again, producing a rapid, loud, and violent thumping sound that carried just enough through the house. This is something rabbits do instinctively when they sense a threat, but Erlene later told reporters that she'd never once witnessed Coco behave this way in all the time that they had him. Like, he was really throwing himself around the cage. It was enough that it was impossible to sleep through. This sound is what pulled Erlene out of sleep and sent her downstairs. When she reached the kitchen, she of course found her home on fire. By this point, visibility was almost completely gone. Before notifying anyone else, she grabbed Coco's cage and pulled him out of the house first. She would later describe the scene as insane, saying she could not see through the smoke at all. So by this point, it was very much developing. After getting Coco outside, she quickly went back in, woke her sister, and then got her 92-year-old mother. County firefighters arrived shortly after, and when everything was said and done, all 3 family members and Coco had made it out without a single injury. I saw headlines about this, and it's honestly just remarkable to think that a rabbit saved a family from possibly burning alive. The fire chief did confirm that the blaze originated from those embers on the deck, noting that the family believed it was fully extinguished before going to bed. I mean, really, what else can you do? The flames caused significant damage to the rear of the home and tore through a large portion of the kitchen, which is exactly where Coco was sitting in his cage, but thankfully he was loud enough. And when she spoke to reporters afterwards, Erlene called Coco the family's little guardian angel. This is a rabbit that the Rivera family found abandoned underneath their house when they first moved in. They didn't have to take him. There's a good chance he would have no longer been alive by the point that this happened, and he returned the favor in the end. I know it's a short one and it's pretty straightforward, but I had to end it on a good note. Those first 2 were just very, very bad.
Alright, I ain't gonna lie, y'all. That's the end of the video. This was an interesting job, I'm not even gonna lie. Definitely was. I actually had to, my job, bro, I'm about to go and search for more of these to actually react to. Cause I'm running out of videos, gang, and I can't do that. I'm supposed to be on a whole streak with YouTube. I'm running out of videos. The algorithm really not showing me nothing no more that's interesting, so that's that. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna figure it out for y'all though. You know what I'm saying? But anyways though, that's the end of the video. Y'all stay safe out there. Make sure you like and comment on this video, subscribe. We out. We dipping.